watch the crowd as they put their money in the treasury. And this is telling me that Jesus is watching how we give. Out of all the places where Jesus Christ could have stopped, he stopped right across from where the money was being thrown into the treasury, so that we could see specifically what persons were giving and how much they were giving. So that's point number one. Second point I want to establish is that giving back to God is not just limited to our money or tangible things. Giving back to God is not just limited to our money or tangible things. Giving also includes giving of our time, our talent, our ability, and our resources. We see this in 1 Peter verses 4, 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 to 11. You want to read that from the chat? 1 Peter chapter 4, verses, 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 to 11.
As every man hath received a gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of God. If any man minister, let him do it as of ability which God giveth, that God in all things may be glorified in Jesus Christ, to whom be praise and dominion forever.
Okay, if this was a Bible study, I would have asked various persons to tell me from this scripture that was read, ability, right, which is our talent. And it also goes on to say that you should minister unto others. This word minister is the same thing as serving others. And of course, you can't serve without offering your time. So in this one passage, we can clearly see that God expects us to give of our time and our talent, and of course, our resources. So, as I indicated initially, that we just want to set the stage with these two very important facts. That one, God is interested in our giving, and that two, our giving is not just limited to our money, but it also includes our time, our talent, and our resources. Nevertheless, while we know that giving is not just limited to our time, talent, and resources, in today's discussion, we primarily want to focus on giving of our money, right? So how do I develop a healthy mindset towards giving back to God? As a teenager, someone who is just still in school, as a young adult, as someone who is in the university or college, or someone who is fresh out of college and doing an internship. How do I develop a healthy mindset towards it? I want to start off by saying that one, we should remember the foundation which you were taught. Remember the lessons you were taught when you were a little child. Who can remember when mommy and daddy, from a very tender age, used to give you a little coin or a little paper money to drop in the collection plate? I'm sure at that time you did not actually know what you were doing. You didn't even know the denomination or how to count money at the time. But nevertheless, every single time you come to church, Mama would give you something to drop in the collection plate. And as I speak about the foundation, this is the type of foundation I am talking about, right? We should not forget these fundamental principles that you were taught as you were growing up as a little child, right? And this is in keeping with what the Bible says in Proverbs 22 and verse 6, where it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So when your mommy and your daddy was teaching you to drop a collection in the plate every Sunday, it's not because they just wanted to drop it sick for dropping it sick. They were actually teaching you from a very tender age, right? Which is according to the word of God, that on the first day of the week, you should come prepared with something, right? So that is actually what they were teaching you. But guess what? The problem is that some of us, as we get more mature, and as we evolve into teenagers, young adults, we depart from these solid foundations that our parents pretty much established for us. Right? So what I am saying is that we should not depart from the teachings that you were taught from a tender age, because once you stick to this teaching, I believe that it will be very vital in helping us as we develop into young adult teenagers to continue on and to feel necessary for us to give back to God. Alright? So my first encouragement to us is that we should not depart from the foundational teaching that we received when we were a little child growing up, but rather we should give more earnest heed to them, lest anytime we should let them slip. Doesn't that sound familiar to us? In Hebrews 2 and verse 1, it says that we are supposed to do what? Give them more earnest, pay attention to the things that you have been taught throughout your life, throughout your Christian life. So that's encouragement number one. What are we discussing? Developing a healthy mindset towards giving. So this brings me to my, so alright, let me, before I jump into my second point, I want to ask a question. Should I be giving of my money to the best of my ability while I am a teenager or a young adult in school? Or should I wait until I finish and get my whatever degree it is? Whether it's a law degree or a bachelor's degree in IT, whatever area of study you're undertaking, right? I know some of you are in the field of law, some of you are in the field of programming and so forth. So the question is, should I wait? I'm just a teenager now, you know. Should I wait until I start working the big work, the big money, before I give to the best of my ability? These are questions I would want to turn over in your mind. And if I was to give you a quick answer, the quick answer would be no, we should not do. Let us look at Luke 16 and verse 10.
He that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much.
So, from the principle of this text, right, Jesus Christ expects that you should be faithful with whatever you have, whatever little you have, right? So this is about, I'm going to wait until I start earning the big bucks before I truly start giving to God. But Jesus Christ is saying, if you're not faithful with the little lunch money that you're getting, the little allowance that you're getting, then most likely you're not going to be faithful when you start earning the big money, right? So the whole point is that you should learn to be faithful, you should learn to give of whatever God has blessed us with. You know, whether we are a teenager, young adult, in college, whatever it is that God has blessed you with, God expects that you should be faithful with that little that He has blessed you with. And you should not be thinking that I'm not going to give up my best right now until down the line when I start work. No, that's not what God wants, and that's not what God expects. So if I'm faithful to people, God knows that I can be trusted with more. This is the principle. And the inverse is also true. If I'm unwilling to give when I have little, having no money is unlikely to change my giving towards God. Let us look at Mark 12, verse 42 to 44. Many of you is familiar with the widow's mite. Can someone read? So for the because of time. So in Mark 12:42, we see where the poor widow, Jesus Christ has said that the widow has put in more into the treasure than all the others, right? She gave her all. That's what Jesus Christ said. But look at this. The widow had how much money she had? What do you know? A farthing. Right. That was like what, 5 cents in our time. But that's the argument's sake. It was a very small amount of money, right? So we are still on the point, you know. Should I wait until I have a lot of money before I start giving? The widow could have said, boy, I don't have enough money, you know, so I'm not going to give anything, right? But what she did, she gave everything that she had. So the point is, if Jesus Christ wanted us to wait until we have a lot of money to give, He would not have given us this example for us to learn from, right? So it's just for us to understand that giving doesn't depend on waiting until we have a lot of money, right? That is the point I really want to make, right? So what am I saying? Whether you receive a weekly allowance or, you know, a part-time income or a scholarship, doesn't matter. As long as God bless you with something, God expects you to give out of that He has blessed you. And that is the bottom line, right? Let us look at one of our scripture. Ecclesiastes 11, chapter 11 and verse 4. It says, whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the cloud will not reap. What is this passage saying? In other words, there will never be a perfect moment for you to give, right? Don't tell yourself that you're waiting on that perfect circumstances before you act, and in this case, before you give, right? So there is no perfect time for you to give. The perfect time for you to give is whenever it is that God has blessed you, regardless of how much it is. That is the perfect time for you to give, right? So my second encouragement to us is that don't wait until you think you have a lot of money before you decide to start giving back to God. Start where you are with what God has already entrusted to you. Whether you are a teenager receiving an allowance, a student working part-time, or an adult just beginning your career, God is not asking you to give what you don't have. He simply asks you to be faithful with what you have. Right? God is not looking for you to give as a teenager like a man who is working 500,000 or 100,000 per month, right? He's not expecting that. God is not looking for equal gifts from everyone. What he's looking for is equal faithfulness. So it doesn't matter how much money you have, we can all be equal in terms of our faithfulness towards that which we do. Right? That is what God is expecting from us. Right? So God is not looking for equal gifts from everyone. He's looking for equal faithfulness. Whether you have much or little, give to God to your ability and trust Him. Trust Him with the rest. In 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 12 it says, for if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. In other words, Jesus Christ is not expecting you to give what you don't have. Right? He's not expecting that. What he's looking on is your willingness more than anything else. Your willingness. So if you have a little, and God sees that out of that little you are willing to give, that is the type of attitude that God is looking for from each and every one. Right? I see Brother Fabian wanted to ask a question. I'm going to allow you, Brother Fabian, to ask a question. Alright, so this brings me to my third point. Remember where we are? Developing a healthy mindset towards people. I don't want us to get the main point. Right? How can I develop a healthy mindset towards people? I'm going to suggest to everyone, including myself, that to have a healthy mindset or to develop a healthy mindset towards giving back to God, you must first recognize that everything we have belongs to God. We are not owners, but we are stewards of what God has entrusted to us. Right? All things come from you, and of your own have we given you. This was said First Chronicles 29 and verse 14 by David. Because David recognized that it doesn't matter what he had. Because at the end of the day, everything belongs to God. So if we can really looking for ourselves and recognize that, look, the lunch money I get to go to school, shoes I'm on my feet, the knowledge I have to pass my exam, almost everything that we can think of, it belongs to God. Right? So as I'm saying, everything belongs to God. In Haggai 2, chapter 2 and verse 8, it says, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. What makes money? We have silver coin and we have gold coin. So what that is saying to us? The very money that we spend belongs to God. Right? The silver and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty. The earth is the Lord's, and everything in it, the world and all its people, belong to God. So, if you even don't remember anything else that I have said, you cannot forget this very important point. Everything belongs to God. And if we can acknowledge that as individuals, then we should realize that giving back to God of anything that God has blessed me with, it's no big deal. You know, it's no big deal. That's right. Because we belong to God in the first place. We are just what? Stewards, entrusted to manage what God has given to us. Right? So we can't feel like it's a boy too hard to give back to God because I'm going to have less things to buy. And no, we can't think like that. The moment we start thinking like that, we run into trouble with God in the long run. Right? So my point is, if as young adults right now, we can recognize that everything we have belongs to God. When you start working your big bucks and you start working $1 million like Fabian per month, give a little 100,000
Right.
in the collection plate should be nothing.
That's right.
It's nothing.
So,
Because God bless you with $1 million per month anyway, take it.
amen.
You know what I'm saying? So let us think on these words as we strive to be faithful in our giving to God, even at the age of a teenager. Right? I'm mindful of the time, so I'm just going to move to my fourth point. One of the greatest motivation for giving is not that God needs our money, but rather it is that God has been good to us. Is there anyone here that God has not been good to? I doubt anybody can look at them and say, yes, God has not been good to me. I doubt that very much. Just take a moment, right, and think about your own life. Who woke you up this morning? Who has provided food on your table? Right? Who has given you strength to go to school or to work? Right? Who has opened doors for you? Some of you, I know, has received many scholarships throughout your lifetime. Who has who has given you the opportunity that you have to excel in your study, right? And who has given you the ability to carry through difficult seasons, right? The answer to every one of those questions is God. 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 And in James 1 and verse 17, it says, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly light. Every good that we enjoy ultimately comes from God. So this means that every scholarship, every promotion, every business opportunity, every skill, every talent, every single breath that you're taking, it comes from God. It comes from God. So when we give back to God, right, we are not paying Him for His blessing. What we're doing, we're simply expressing our gratitude to all He has done for us. Right? So, if nothing else motivates you to give, then the fact that God has been good to all of us, that should motivate us to want to give to God. Right? So, just to labor the point, I want you to ask yourself this question, right? Has God been faithful to you? Has He protected you? Has He provided for you? Has He answered any of your prayers? Has He carried you through difficult times? Has He shown you mercy when you didn't deserve it? If the answer is yes, then isn't He worthy of our gratitude? You might conclude with something like this. So, when we stop to consider how good God has been to us, giving is no longer something we do because we want to. It becomes something we want to do. Gratitude changes our perspective. We don't give to earn God's favor. We give because we have already experienced His favor. Our giving becomes heartfelt response to His goodness. So, in wrapping up, what are the 4 points we have learned this afternoon? 1, we should remember the foundation. We should remember the teaching that we have received while we were growing up as a little child. And do not depart from them. That's 1. God expects that you should give back to Him out of what He has blessed you with. So it's never about, okay, I'm going to wait. No. It's whatever God has blessed you with, no. And that is what God is expecting, that you should give back to Him out of. Right? 3rd point, we should recognize that everything that we have belongs to God. And 4th, we should naturally want to give back to God because of His goodness toward us. At this time, I'm going to allow Fabian to ask his question. if he still wants to.
Okay, I was trying to complete earlier. You made a point about teenagers, young persons, not earning a lot, or earning when they come into blessing. What is it?
Yeah, to what extent, as a youth, I'm still in college, and I'm remembering that when I was in church school, my parents used to teach us about the topic of youth. So as a 18-year-old in school, getting with the pocket money and lunch money. Should I still be waiting for my parents to give me the money to pocket money?
That's the question, right? Well, to answer your question, when you were a child and you weren't knowledgeable of a lot of things that you were doing, it is different than when you are a teenager and you are quite cognizant and you are more knowledgeable of what you are doing. So God would not expect that what was the last part of the question again? Should I be waiting? Or should I be waiting? Right, so the bottom line is, right, if you are not working, and as a teenager, you are not working and going to school, God is not expecting that we are going to give like the person who is working an income, right? But I made the point earlier that God is looking on whatever gift you have, whatever it is that God has blessed you with, so that lunch money or that allowance that you get from your parents when you are not working, yes, you should still consider giving back something out of it to God, right? So it's not that God expects that you are going to give like the person who's working, but from the moment you receive that, from the moment you realize that even this lunch money, this allowance, is from God Himself and not necessarily from your parents, even though the parents giving it to you. God expects that you should have a willingness to give back something out of that, right? And I don't know if I answered the question adequately, but yes, God does expect you should give out of that allowance, that money, that is.
You mentioned that in the first time that all of us for the program will have foundation of the speak of the learn program and going to Sunday school. What came to thought is, especially in our time now, there is people, some young boys that have never gone to Sunday school. So we would have missed that principle of giving. Do you see a challenge for those persons in the church or young persons? What type of activities that we would have not having a foundational experience?
Okay, so the person who never get exposure to go to church, go to Sunday school, that person, of course, would have, missed out on the foundation principles that, those of us who get opportunity to go to Sunday school would have done. But the point is, God's going to start with that individual whenever he learns truth, right? So, whenever it is that person comes in contact with knowledge of how to give, it may be when that person is 19 or 20. That is where God is going to start with that person, right? So, God is not going to automatically expect that if the person wasn't enlightened about the teaching that he's going to, start just automatically giving. Even though there is something in us that tells us that if there's something in us that tells us that there is a God, at least that should want to evoke something in our minds to say that even though I'm growing up and I'm not going to church and all of that, the fact that there's a God and it's God responsible for me to be alive, then that within itself should want to evoke something in me to want to give. So separate them apart from the person that you exposed. So I think just by nature, all of us have something in us that pretty much tells us that, we should want to give back. Is that correct? Sorry, you can start again.
So the question pertaining to the whole unit of that. Yeah, the question pertaining. So what is someone, even though they don't really have an own, but someone is doing to give them, our parents or a friend, someone is there to give them something to give up to God. But if they choose to not do, they're taking that. Looking at the money to pick up the capacity after denying, that opportunity to pick up the capacity. You haven't, the state is to deny over. What is that? What does that reflect about them?
Alright, I wasn't hearing this clear, so I'm going to attempt to rephrase the question. So are you saying that if I choose, if I'm given money by the said a relative or a friend, not necessarily from my parents, but a relative or a friend, and I said that I choose not to give anything,
The money, saying that they just choose not to take it.
oh, you choose not to take it from that relative or friend. Okay, and what was the question?
What does that ultimately show or reflect about that person that is doing?
Okay. Well, in answering that question, I would ask the motive, what is the motive behind not taking the money? Because the motive could be that because I know God expects me to give of whatever little I have, and I don't want to give anything out of it, so might as well don't bother taking it. If that is the motive, then I'm sure God will have a problem with that, right? But if is for other reasons, say, you just don't want to take the money because of personal reasons, then I don't expect that, God will chastise you for that, because the fact that they don't have the money, right? The fact that they don't have the money, I don't see where God will expect it to take that money. Because remember, God gives us free will, and we can choose to take the money from whoever we want to take it, or don't take it. As I say, it just comes back to the money, right? I don't know if okay. Okay, I understand. Well, you can look at it from many different angles, because, for example, if the person who is giving you the money, right, is a backslider or somebody who has been unfaithful and giving you the money, then you would have done the right thing not to accept that money, because you wouldn't be sending the right message to that person in the state that they are in by accepting the money to drop in the collection plate, because you want the person to first reconcile their relationship with God before they give their money. So, that could be one example. It is just somebody, who's not a member of the church and they give you the money to drop in the plate. I don't see anything from a scriptural point of view. I don't see anything wrong with you taking that money and drop it in the collection plate, right? Because it's a gift. It's a gift. The person is giving you that money, right? It's not like the person steal it and give it to you. It's coming from an honest place, and that person gives you the money. I don't see anything from a biblical point of view. I don't see anything taking that money and drop it in the plate. And if you choose not to, then I'm not sure how to look at that. I don't know if Mary, you want to weigh in on this?
But the more people do more, as God says. So if the person, if the money is legitimate, honestly, real money, the person gives you the money, as if you're benefited and give it. Ideally, the person wants to the church, then all things being equal, to the good and take and give anything that the person wants the money to come to do it. The question is though, is that the person giving you the money, say it becomes yours, or the person giving you the gift. So that is the the distinction we want to do is that the person giving you the money and then you can give it to the person so give this for you. Because you're just going to contribute versus you're getting better gift and then you return what to do with the money. But that's a very good experience. Right, I guess it will depend a lot locally, but the person who is giving their collection by someone, here's a money that you can put in the collection from somewhere. Not a year you go to church, I go to church every Sunday. Say a money that you can drop into the tree, right? So if they are giving you, but they are stipulating what to do with it is that. It reminds me, however, of David when he was going to sacrifice. And he said, sell me at a price, the power and whatever, because I don't want to give to God that will cost me nothing. It points to giving supposed to be a sacrifice. So the question I will ask, if I'm understanding it right, the person who then would use that and says, I want to give that which is a sacrifice to me. So I don't really want you to give me my collection. If you want to give me to go and drop it in for you, well, that's fine. But I want to, if you give me a money, then I will, out of that, decide what I'm going to give out of it. So if you have that type of rapport, that is the ideal position. Because as a Christian, I think that's what you were saying earlier, as a Christian, you have moved on from the popular stage where you are giving something to drop in the page when you started, to where as a child of God, you are making sacrifice out of what you do to be your person.
I know what I was doing with the hand, but because this is physical. I'm not sure if we can get all of the physical emotions, in my opinion. I get the idea that he was saying that here am I, I'm not in college, I'm not working, I'm not home. A relative came with $1,000. I'm a Christian, I'm a youth, out of that $1,000, I go to church on Thursday, we go to worship, and that money that I have in my pocket, I deny the opportunity of giving. I'm not sure that is what I'm going to say. But I get that sense that I have the money, I got the money for the person, but I have the money, but I choose not to give a portion from that gift.
So everybody has different views on so but it's just you guys are putting it in the past tense. But what if we're presently right here and I'm going around fighting money, right? And I'm going to my work. I see that someone don't touch the money in their hands to print it in the front. And I said to them, I said, you know what, put this in the front. And then after the partner refused. So I'm just saying, in that present moment, if it actually ongoing, and I need that time, in that moment in time, they collect the money and saying, you can put this in the fund. While I also have my money to put in the fund, because often for them to put money in the fund, I told the service that you go over. And just ask them if they refuse to give in that moment in time. What does that reflect on the person? Like, what does that show about the person that refuses to give in that specific moment in time? Now, like, it was, to them, asking to say, oh, put this in the corner, just in the moment that, they get the money. So that's what I'm asking, basically. But, there's very close.
Yes, so when you see the different acts of worship, singing, preaching, communion, praying, and giving. As Christians, we must recognize that it is commanded to give. You see, and if consistently we fail to give or we neglect that responsibility, we must ask ourselves, are we worshiping God in spirit and in truth? We don't worship acceptable to God when we withhold our finances from the ministry. And one of the passages that really stand out to me is 2 Corinthians chapter 8, where we see the church in Macedonia where Paul commended them because it was a very poor church, but they were joyful in their giving. And Paul said that they first gave themselves to the Lord. They recognized that they belong to the Lord, and then they give towards God's will, because it is the will of God to give. So I think right from giving is to give the right attitude and recognizing that it's a responsibility that we have as Christians to give to God.
Amen. Any other questions? Caleb?
So, what of normal? The practice of giving when we have little and then we are young. I know that you are a big man, but you grow up in the church, you're a Christian, you're a teenager. Is it that, I don't know what stage you work in as a teenager, alright? But looking back, you're giving a personal testimony. And looking back, do you think that if you, at that time, took on the approach of not giving up your everything, that it would impact you giving today of your more?
That's right.
Very good question.
That's right.
I truly believe that, yes, it definitely would have impacted the way I live today.
Wow.
Because as I mentioned earlier, right, God knows us more than we know ourselves. And sometimes we think that without practicing something, then it will miraculously just come natural, right? And I'm a firm believer that all from a tender age, learning to give definitely has helped me even as I'm an adult now, right? To appreciate how to give. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I don't think none of us is perfect.
Yeah.
Because every day we are aiming towards doing better and better each day, right? But definitely, Fabian, you know, I would say definitely it has impacted, you know, my thoughts, my thinking, and one very important thing for me personally, what also helped me as I grew up as a young person in the church. Because I'm usually at Bible study and Sunday night. Because each time, sometimes you get to dive deeper into other scriptures. And as I grow up and I hear passages like will and manner of God, and we hear I will not give to God that has not cost me anything. And you know, you hear these scriptures, you realize that giving to God is very serious, right? And these passages as I do and hear them have helped to shape my mind in terms of thinking, right? And have the right attitude and healthy attitude towards giving. So, you know, this is even an encouragement to us that when they stay away from worship, there's a lot of things they miss, right? There are a lot of things they miss. Because there's so many things that you can say about giving, right? I could preach a month. Right? Giving. Alright? So, what is the point? Every single opportunity the church needs to discuss topics like giving, you should avail yourself to be a part of it, because that in itself will help to shape your thinking and to help you to have the right attitude, the right mindset to giving. So I'm mindful of the time, so we're going to wrap up here. So I'm just going to invite Brother Myron to come and close out.
So long, guys.